Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 14, Texts 25 and 26. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Being unable to protect himself from the threefold miseries of material existence, the conditioned soul becomes very morose and lives a life of lamentation. These threefold miseries are miseries suffered by mental calamity at the hands of the demigods, such as freezing wind and scorching heat, miseries offered by other living entities, and miseries arising from the mind and body themselves. Purport. The so-called happy materialistic person is constantly having to endure the threefold miseries of life, called Adidaivika, Adhyatmika, and Adibhautika. Actually, no one can counteract these threefold miseries. All three may assail one at one time, or one misery may be absent and the other present. Thus, the living entity is full of anxiety, fearing misery from one side or the other. The conditioned soul must be disturbed by at least one of these miseries, one of these three miseries. There is no escape. Text 26, translation. As far as transactions with money are concerned, if one person cheats another by a farthing or less, they become enemies. Purport. This is called samsara davanala. Everything, even in ordinary transactions between two people, there is invariably cheating because the conditioned soul is defective in 4 ways. He is illusioned, he commits mistakes, his knowledge is imperfect, and he has a propensity to cheat. Unless one is liberated from material conditioning, these 4 defects must be there. Consequently, every man has a cheating propensity which is employed in business or money transactions. Although 2 friends may be living peacefully together, due to their propensity to cheat, they become enemies when there is a transaction between them. A philosopher accuses an economist of being a cheater, and an economist may accuse a philosopher of being a cheater when he comes in contact with money. In any case, this is the condition of material life. One may profess a high philosophy, but when one is in need of money, he becomes a cheater. In this material world, so-called scientists, philosophers, and economists are nothing but cheaters in one way or another. The scientists are cheaters because they present so many bogus things in the name of science. They propose going to the moon, but actually they end up cheating the entire public of large sums of money for their experiments. They cannot do anything useful. Unless one can find a person transcendental to the 4 basic defects, one should not accept advice and become a victim of the material condition. The best process is to take the advice and instructions of Sri Krishna or his bona fide representative. In this way, one can be happy in this life and the next. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vancha Kalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shavasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. There was an experiment conducted by some scientists. They had a tiny hamster in a box, and the box had one small hole, and the hamster would put out his nose and mouth through that hole, and once in a while they would feed him a piece of cheese. So he was very happy. He got programmed into thinking, through this hole I get cheese. And the second phase of the experiment was that they made another hole in the box, same side, but another hole somewhere else. And every time the mouse would put his nose out of that hole, they would buzz him with a little electricity. Bzz. So he would put his nose out through this hole, he would get a piece of cheese. Out of that hole, he would get electricity, Bzz, like a shock. So naturally he became programmed. Oh, this is cheese, this is shock. And the next phase of the experiment was to now randomize the cheese and the electric shock to confuse the hamster. So once he would put his nose out of here, he would get it, bzz. Like, hey, what happened? He'd put his nose out of that, he would get a piece of cheese. So now he was confused. Where is the cheese and where is the shock? Do you think he stopped because he was getting electric shock? Do you think he stopped putting his nose out of the hole? No. Why? Because he wanted to know where the cheese is. So he kept trying. And once in a while a piece of cheese. So that was worth the effort. The fourth phase of the experiment was that they opened the other side of the box completely for him. So if he had turned around, he could have escaped the box. But do you know what the hamster did? He kept putting his nose out of a hole, hoping to get some cheese. So it's described that being in the material world, we get three very, very, very inescapable circumstances. They're called miseries. Miseries due to one's own body and mind. This is called adhyatmika klesha. Miseries due to someone else's body and mind. These are called adhibhautika klesha. And miseries due to higher order disturbances. These are called the adidaivika kleshas. Now, Prabhupada says in the purport, the conditioned soul must be disturbed by at least one of these three miseries. There is no escape. And this is why there is no escape. Can anyone say, I don't want to be in this body? They can't say that because they don't even know they're not this body. So getting rid of the body is not an option. Sometimes the miseries are so much that they want to get rid of the body, but they commit suicide, thinking that's the best way to get rid of the misery. The Vedas describe that at the time of death, the pain that one experiences because the soul is going to be extricated from the body, the pain one experiences is equivalent to 24,000 scorpions biting a person simultaneously. But the sadness one is experiencing in one's life that impels him or her to commit suicide must be more than that. That is why they give up their life. And this pain and sadness comes from these three sources. By having a material body, there is misery, both on the gross level and the subtle level. Gross level misery is whatever, name the disease, pick your poison, as they say. Arthritis, cancer, heartache, whatever, cholesterol, whatever. There's such a long list that you can't even name them, or I can't name them. And then there is misery due to the mind. The mind gets agitated. Then to a degree that even the mind can get diseased. There are mental illnesses. The whole garden variety of it. Even if one doesn't have a mental illness, the mind is disturbed by just things, How will I pay my bills? How will I keep this job going? How will I, whatever, why is my situation like this? It's called lamentation here, Prabhupada. The verse says he lives his life in lamentation. Because anything and everything about this world and his or her situation, they are not happy about. They're not happy with it. There's something or the other that they're dissatisfied about. Oh, I wish I were good looking. I wish I was muscular. I wish I was slim. I wish I were athletic. I wish I was whatever. Something or the other. So in Sanskrit, the physical and the mental illnesses are called adhya, adhya and vyadhya. Vyadhi means physical illness, adhi means mental illness or mental disturbance. And one is constantly plagued by these two. There is no point in time one can say, my body is in perfect condition, my mind is in perfect condition. It's just not possible. It may be for a few moments. And in those few moments, something else will be acting. It is called adhibhautika. Someone else will bother us. Why are they like that? Just by being in this material world, especially as human beings, for the matter all animals have a social component to themselves, right? They want the company of another. There is very rarely any person or any species that doesn't want any company. Especially when springtime comes, all the males, they start their courtship dances to attract the female. The peacocks do it, the lions do it, the birds, the pigeons, name it. The human beings do it regardless of spring, and they do it every season. Animals only think about it during spring. Springtime is mating time. For human beings, every moment is spring. So everyone wants company, companionship. There's a social, like yesterday we were discussing that the soul by nature is called Anandamaya Abhyasat. Ananda only comes from interaction. One cannot be happy by himself. It's very rare. They're called Atma Rama. There are very few persons like that. We're talking of the conditioned soul. So there is no conditioned soul who can live just by himself or herself. It's just not possible. If they're all alone, lonely, they will spend their time on Facebook looking for company. It's just not possible to be so antisocial that they cannot be. And if they are like that, then they end up with serious mental illness. And someone else's body and mind, on one hand, they want company, and on the other hand, that company disturbs them. So we are disturbed by another living entity in terms of mosquitoes, flies, germs, wife or husband, neighbor's dog, the politicians, the government. Somebody or the other is bothering us. In fact, to a degree that some persons, for them that disturbance is so much, they actually imagine that someone is out there waiting to get them. The government people are hiding somewhere, they're waiting to get them or something. It's called Adibhautika. It's like the extreme of Adibhautika Klesha. Coming closer to home, if the mosquitoes are not bothering us, the flies or whatever, in any relationship, something about the other person is always bothering us, even if they're very close to us. Why did they say like that? Why are they doing like this? Why today they didn't say hello to me? What happened? Every day they're very nice to me. Today they didn't say hello. What's wrong? It may be small misery, but it's misery, and it can become very big. And in any relationship, these things are there. On one hand, there's the force impelling a person to be social and wanting the company of others, and on the other hand, they're disturbed by that company. This is called Adibhautika Klesha. And if everything is nice, the body and mind are healthy, the relationships and friendships are nice, there is the higher order disturbance. Too cold, too hot, earthquakes, famine, flood, drought, or, epidemics. Epidemics are Adibhautika Klesha also. Things happen. Global warming, El Nino, they keep changing. One day it's too cold, one day it's too hot. Winters are sometimes warm, summers are cold. As they say, if you don't like the weather in Chicago, wait a minute. It will change. And all these kleshas, the three categories of miseries, happen by our karmic behaviors. It's not that the demigods are out there just to get us. In the time of Yudhishthira Maharaj, as we were discussing, this is a side point, all the demigods would regularly visit Earth planet. Very regularly, constantly, they would keep coming because they wanted the association of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And they wanted the association of other devotees of Krishna. But it's described that in Kali Yuga, no demigod comes to planet Earth. In the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami gives a very um, devotionally ecstatic reason for why the demigods don't visit planet Earth. He said that when Krishna was on the planet, every day he would engage in many, many Vedic rituals. And Vedic ritual means you have to invite the demigods. They have to come take their share of the Vedic ritual. So Krishna used to perform so many sacrifices and rituals that the demigods were constantly on earth. And the wives of the demigods were feeling lonely. What is this? My husband is always in the temple. So they prayed to Lord Buddha. They prayed to Krishna in an indirect sort of way. Oh, my dear Lord Buddha, please hasten your advent. Because when Lord Buddha came, he stopped all Vedic sacrifices. So demigods didn't have to come to planet Earth. They stayed with their wives. So the wives were very happy. What is this? You're always going to temple. What is this? You're always in some service. So there's three, the demigods are not out there to get the living entities. They're there to dish out the karmic reactions of the living entities, the human beings particularly. So there is no escape from it, because we cannot say, I don't like my body, I want to escape from it. Not possible. We cannot say, I want to be in a place where there are no other living entities. Not possible. Is there any place like that? You can't even go to the Arctic Circle anymore. Why? Because there are so many scientists there. Even if you don't find the polar bears, the scientists are there. It's a crowded place now. That's a joke, by the way. Anyway, it's a crowded place. And even if we find ourselves alone, there is some living entity that will bother us. The bacteria inside our body, the virus that we might breathe in. It's not like the Arctic Circle is free of viruses or anything. So you can't escape that. And we can't say, I don't like the conditions on planet Earth, I will go somewhere else. Spock, buzz me out. Bzz, here we go. It's not Star Trek either. We can't do that. So we can't escape. We can't escape the miseries due to our body and mind. We can't escape the miseries due to someone else's body and mind. And we can't escape the miseries due to higher order disturbances. What to do? What most conditioned souls do is they either resign to it, so they have a fatalistic approach to life. This is it. A defeatist attitude. Or the materialist gets very busy in counteracting it. Something that they cannot counteract, they take upon themselves to counteract. So they spend their entire life dodging the miseries. And if they're able to dodge it, wow, that's victory, that's happiness. As soon as the disease comes on, boop, pop a pill. Mind's not okay, pop a pill. How many pills do people take in America? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable the number of pills people take. It's ways to counteract. And if someone else's body and mind is bothering us, we give them a pill. Go away from here. We use our defense mechanism to counteract the suffering due to others' body and mind. Correct? We use protection in terms of sprays, we use medicine, we use certain things that will keep the insects out. In India, there's a very cruel thing. I never liked it. There are two things. They have a electric thing with wires, and there's electricity passing through it naturally. And something about it attracts, I think there's a buzz to it or something. It attracts the mosquitoes. Yeah, it's the ultraviolet light or something. So all the mosquitoes are attracted to it. And they get zapped. Bzz, bzz, mosquito after mosquito. It's terrible. And nowadays they have something else which looks like a tennis racket. And these people sit in front of their TV. In one hand is the remote, in the other hand is the tennis racket-like thing. And as mosquitoes come near them or flies, they press a switch, it gets fully charged with electricity, and they zap the insect. Bzz, bzz. That's cruel. That's very cruel. But that's the way they try to counteract. And other human beings, if they say something or do something, then we have our speech, which is the greatest defense mechanism. We don't have to do anything, we just have to say something to someone, harsh, hurtful, and that's our way of defending. And we try other ways, building air conditioners, heating, jackets, and it doesn't have to be any jacket, it has to be what's that hammer? Not hammer. What's that thing? The new brand or whatever. Some branded jackets that feel warmer and safer inside that. And we try different ways. And the whole life is spent in trying to counteract these three miseries when there's no escape from it. The Vedas say, or the Bhagavatam says, that the only escape from the threefold miseries is that our attention is absorbed somewhere else. For most persons, the attention is absorbed in the body and mind, so they cannot escape these miseries. For the devotees of Krishna, their attention is absorbed in their service to Krishna, in their relationship with Krishna. And because love for Krishna, at whatever stage that love may be, very, very small stage or mature stage, still it's love for Krishna. That love for Krishna is so compelling that they will take on any difficulty and not even think of it as a difficulty. A perverted parallel, if you will. This is not necessarily the case always, but just to get a sense of it, is like a mother caring for a child. So much inconvenience. Yet, the mother continues to care for the child. And the other difficulties, she doesn't worry too much about. Not that she's not going through the difficulties, but it's that those difficulties don't take her attention away from what she's meant to do, or what she would like to do. Of course, it's a material example because things change even with mothers. But for example, so on a transcendental level, love for Krishna is so compelling, it is so relishable that all other difficulties are hardly any difficulty, hardly noticed. It doesn't mean that one doesn't counteract them, but it's not something significant for them. And what better example than Srila Prabhupada to be able to speak about? Prabhupada's body was in a very weak condition. He had suffered 3 heart attacks, and his kidneys were not functioning. So his legs were collecting what's called edema, that is collection of water. It's a bad sign. Whenever legs collect water, it's a sign that the kidneys are not functioning. So he would need massages every day to keep that water away. Yet he came to America in the dead of winter. He came in September, so very quickly it became cold. And in India, the intensity of cold is nothing compared to what's here, especially in such a fragile body or aged body. But the mission of the Guru and for Krishna was so compelling that it was worth taking on all that difficulty. One time Srila Prabhupada had a severe tooth issue. And in the middle of Bhagavatam class, the tooth was shaking so much that he just removed it and gave it to someone and said, put it away. And he described how the soul within the body does not identify with the body, although it's still in the body. The description is that of a coconut. That a coconut has fiber and a shell, and inside is the actual coconut. If you keep it to dry, when it is still raw, the coconut is very tightly fixed to the shell, and it's inside the fiber. If you let it dry, over time, the coconut separates from the shell. If you shake it, you can hear it actually. Without breaking the coconut separates from its shell. A liberated person is like that. The soul is there, but it's not identifying with the body, it is separate. There was Adi Bhautika Klesha. There were so many persons who were not cooperating with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada wrote and invited his god brothers, come and serve with me. I don't even have to be any acharya. I'll join your ashram, but come. Let's preach together. No, they didn't support. He wanted visa for this country, or whatever countries, they didn't give it to him. They were always saying something against. When Prabhupada went to India, the Indian government was very much afraid of Srila Prabhupada and his disciples, because there was a rumor in the Indian government that Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta is actually in cohorts with the CIA, and all his disciples are CIA agents. So they were not getting visas, they were not getting entry into the country. And Prabhupada said, what is this? We're serving Krishna. We are not any CIA agents. And they said, no, they must be the CIA. Look at how much money they got. Somebody or the other was always saying something against. Yet, the love for Krishna was so compelling. The service to Krishna was so compelling that these discomforts didn't matter. This is the way to transcend the threefold miseries, is to invest our consciousness in developing our loving relationship with Krishna and Krishna's representatives. Then these won't matter. Can anyone say that our bodies are cooperating with us every day? We can't say. Yet, we find the devotees day after day, engaged in their service. Is there enough chances for the mind to be disturbed? Oh yeah, but they brush it aside. Service to Krishna. Are others non-cooperative? All the time. Something or the other. Even if they are not even if they are cooperating, sometimes we don't cooperate with others. It still is a disturbance for us, right? Somehow or the other, there is lack of cooperation or something. We say to each other, or some people say to each other, however, but this is always there. It's part of the social dynamic. But there is a higher purpose, the service to Krishna. Then there is the severe weather. Yet the devotees go out. Regardless of weather, they go out. Regardless of weather, they come to offer their service to Krishna. Even if there is a blizzard, the devotees will come. And offer their service. Do this, whatever is needed to be done, they will do. It's described that when we are suffering from miseries of the body or the mind, or due to someone else's body or mind or whatever, any of these three Adi Bhautika, Adhyatmika, Adi Daivika Kleshas, the way to transcend that, to begin, is to meditate on our eternal nature. After all, I am a soul. The soul has no suffering. It's because I'm stuck in this material body that I am identifying with it, therefore there's sense of pain and misery and all of that. Once when we start thinking like that, the malady reduces. Or at least it doesn't bother so much. It's a very, very powerful trick to meditate on our eternal nature. Because the soul doesn't have suffering. Suffering is is a forced state of consciousness upon the living entity. Because the eternal soul doesn't have disease. Na jayate mriyate va kadachan. It's not born, it doesn't die. Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaha. It has nothing called past, present and future. Nainam chindanti shastrani. It cannot be hurt by any weapon. Nainam dahati pavakaha. It cannot be burnt by fire. Na chainam kledayanta apaha. It cannot be moistened by water. Na shoshayati marutaha. It cannot be withered by the wind. But we see that all our suffering comes from these 5 elements. So meditating on the eternal nature helps transcend. That's a way of being free of the bodily identification. Just even considering it, I'm not this body. A soul by nature doesn't have these things. It gives us a different strength by which we can face the miseries that are forced on us. Then the focus changes. He says, as far as transactions with money are concerned, if one person cheats another by a farthing or less, they become enemies. Actually, they don't even have to cheat one another. They just have to perceive that they have been cheated. Even then they become enemies. Perception is stronger than reality. This is a slogan in marketing. It doesn't matter whether it is true or not. If the customer doesn't perceive your product as useful, you can bang your head against the wall telling the customer, this is really a good product, and it doesn't matter. Because perceptions are more powerful than reality. And believe it or not, we live in a world of perceptions. We see everything from our senses and mind, and that's our perception of things. And being convinced of our perception is called cheating, because there is another truth, perhaps, that we were not considering. You ask another person, and their reality and their way they perceive things will be very different from ours. And that element that brings differences of perceptions between persons is money. Something about money. It is said that when there is good friendship, you should be careful that money should not be part of that friendship. Because the moment it is, it's the seed for... Unless the friendship is really, really, really strong and transcendental, money will create a problem, even between the best of friends. If not now, sometime in the life. You should be careful. Therefore, it is described, money that is loaned is as good as money that is donated, because it never comes back. And this about perceptions. In Ramayana, there's a story of 2 brothers, Vali and Sugriva. Vali was the older brother and Sugriva was the younger brother. And Vali was the king of Kishkinda. One night, a demon by the name Dundubi, no, not Dundubi, some demon, Maya demon, he came and challenged Vali. Hey, Vali, you coward, you're sleeping in the comforts of the arms of your wife and inside a fortress. If you're really man enough or monkey enough, come out and fight with me. Kshatriyas, warriors don't like challenges. They don't neglect challenges. They love it. He came out in the middle of the night. He said, who's this rascal who's challenging me? And Sugriva also came to assist Vali. And so both of them started pursuing this demon, and the demon ran away. So Vali didn't say, ha ha, he ran away. He said, I'm going to punish this fellow, and chased him. And the chase went into a cave. That took them underground. So when they came there, Vali told Sugriva, you stand guard here. I will go inside and I will kill this fellow. So Sugriva stood outside the cave. So Vali went inside and he only heard them fight with each other. Bam, 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 bam. That's all he heard. For days on end they were fighting. Non-stop. Finally, he heard some crying, ah, and blood oozed out of the cave. And Sugriva thought, oh, Vali is dead. And this demons are going to come out now and attack Kishkinda and me and the whole kingdom of Vanaras. What should I do? I should protect my citizens. So he pushed a large boulder and closed the mouth of the cave. So the demon will not come out. And he went home and he shared the news that there was a fight. I think Vali was killed. So the citizens all said, whoa, we need a king, we need a king. You're his younger brother, you're the rightful heir to the throne. Please become our king. So Sugriva became king. But actually what had happened is that Vali had killed the demon. And the blood that came out was of the demon's blood. So when Vali came to the mouth of the cave, it was closed. So instead of thinking something must else be the case, Vali came to a conclusion that Sugriva intentionally closed the mouth of the cave so that I will die inside and he will become king. That was not Sugriva's intention, but that's how he perceived it. So somehow or the other he pushed the rock aside, the big boulder, and he came with bloodshot eyes, anger, his teeth gnarling, and then came in front of Sugriva and said, yes, I knew you were waiting all the time to see me dead so you can be the king. And Sugriva said, no, my dear brother. I thought the demon had killed you. And to protect our citizens, I had covered them up. No! I will not accept your explanation. In fact, I don't even care for your explanation. Even if you try to give one, I'm going to challenge you and I'm going to kill you. And they both started fighting, and Sugriva was weaker than Vali. So Sugriva had to flee the kingdom and went and hid himself on the top of a mountain. Because Vali could not come to that mountain. He was cursed that if he came there, he would die. There was some other incident. So he went and hid himself there. So this is how perceptions. We see something, we perceive something, and we accept that as reality. So Prabhupada says, this is because of cheating propensity. We have defective senses. No one can say that my senses are perfect. That thinking is defective. But these are the four defects of a conditioned soul. They have limited senses. These senses can become illusioned, therefore they can make a mistake, but they're convinced that they're right. These are the four problems. So naturally, they cannot speak the truth, whether they are scientists or philosophers, because they have defective senses. They cannot approach the truth and they cannot speak the truth. They have to cheat. Srila Prabhupada would say, oh, no, the scientists would claim, no, with our new technology, we can better explain certain phenomena. And Prabhupada would challenge, that technology has been built by you and your senses are defective. The same defect is there in the technology. Naturally. One time Srila Prabhupada was asked by someone, by a scientist, Swamiji. This was on a morning walk, and the devotees every day in the morning walk would, this was almost like a role play. The disciples would take on the roles of philosophers, certain scientists, certain materialists, economists, and they would pose their theories, and Prabhupada would smash those theories on the basis of Vedic understanding. And he would point out the flaws of that kind of thinking so that the disciples would become trained. So on one such morning walk, one of the disciples posing as a scientist, he said, "How can you claim that your belief is scientific?" Because Prabhupada would say, devotional service is very scientific. So they posed, how can you say, we think it's nothing but a set of beliefs. How can you call them scientific? And Prabhupada's answer was, this morning, his answer was, if you can call your beliefs science, we can call our beliefs science. It's as simple as that. And your belief is that life comes from matter. Is there any evidence that life comes from matter? Have you ever seen anywhere? There is no evidence for it. A human being gives birth to a human being. A tree gives birth to another tree through its seed. An animal gives birth to another animal. Have you ever seen life coming out of matter? Like this table, if we get another black table next to him, will we have a third table? Because unbeknownst to us, they're breaking the regulative principles inside the temple. It's not like that. This table cannot mate with another table. If that were the case, we would have had so many chairs in the temple. It doesn't work. Little tiny chairs. Life doesn't come from matter. Life comes from life. So Prabhupada said, if you can, or another one is the evolution. The theory of evolution. That one species, because of circumstances, in the mode of survival of the fittest, has to adapt itself to the environment, and suddenly the bird becomes a reptile. Whoa, hold on a second. How's that happen? It happens over many millions of life. Human beings for so many millions. Are we going to morph into something else? One time Srila Prabhupada was told, Srila Prabhupada was reading very, very nice poetry. And he said, look at this nice poetry. He turned to Shrutakirti Prabhu and he said, they say we come from cavemen. He said, your ancestors must be cavemen. My ancestors were great poets. One time someone challenged for discussing with Prabhupada, Prabhupada, they say that we have come from monkeys. Prabhupada said, you may have come from monkeys because you still behave like one. I did not come from monkeys. I came from great demigods and great sages who were my ancestors. Like that. So Prabhupada said, if your beliefs you can pass around as science, our beliefs we can pass around as science. Why not? So then here, there is always this contention when it comes to money. The philosopher thinks that the economist is a cheater. The economist thinks that the philosopher is a cheater. And the conclusion of the Vedas is both of them are cheaters. Because he said the scientists are cheaters because they present so many bogus things in the name of science. In the name of science, there is a promise that in the future, we will be able to conquer death. So the Time magazine I was referring to, the cover page of Time magazine is, can Google stop death? So the scientists will say, in the future, our technology is developing so nicely, in the future, we will be able to overcome death. And Prabhupada said, what is this, in the future? If I tell you, in the future, I'll give you $1 million, will you believe me? If so, then here you go, $1 million for you, 25 years later. What is this? It has no sense. Post-dated check. Post-dated checks have no value. Then Prabhupada writes, they propose going to the moon, but actually they end up cheating the entire public of large sums of money for their experiments. So after supposedly going to the moon, they brought back a bunch of dust. And so Prabhupada challenged, after spending so many billions of dollars, you've come back with dust? What's the value of that dust? Moon dust. It's not useful for any human being on the planet. Prabhupada was very strong about this. that they say they went to the moon, but there isn't any evidence for it. In fact, they haven't, or like that. So when he spoke like that in about 1967, 68 or sometime like that, one of Prabhupada's disciples became very disturbed. His name was Purushottam. He said, "What do you mean? This is 1969, that's when the moon landing." So Prabhupada was watching TV and they showed the moon landing and all that. And Prabhupada said they haven't gone to the moon. So Purushottam became very disturbed. What? Look at it. It's you can see them landing on the moon. How can you say they did not go? He became so disturbed that he actually left Prabhupada's association. So while the moon landing was happening, Prabhupada was having a cup of khichdi that Mother Malati had made. And so Prabhupada ate the khichdi and he said, "Malati has done more service than the scientists. She has done something practical and valuable. Then in the name of science, they've spent so much money." He said, "They cannot do anything useful." I gave our Bhakti Shastri class an assignment. The assignment was, refute the statement. You have to be able to refute the statement that by the development in the field of medicine, humans have started living longer. That's the claim of modern medicine, that by the development in technology in medicine, we are able to save lives. And the Bhakti Shastri students had to refute that statement on the basis of Ishopanishad. Because no one can extend life. Cannot. Try what you want, you cannot. If that was the case, then medicine that was administered to every human being must work. You can't say even one person will die. Because even if one person dies, then your medicine, then you'll come up with, there is a range of probabilities. That means it's not true. Not every person who takes medicine has to live. It's not. Etc. So there was a surgeon who came into the operating theater with a garland around his neck. So the patient, before he got his anesthesia, he looked at the doctor and he asked, "Who's the garland for?" Sorry, the doctor had brought the garland with him. He said, "Who's the garland for?" So the doctor said, "If the operation is successful, it is for me. If it is not, then it is for you." So there's always some way, we don't know. Or they say, operation was very successful, just the patient died. We did everything right. Then Prabhupada says, unless one can find a person transcendental to the four basic defects, one should not accept advice and become a victim of the material condition. Therefore, we should be very careful whose advice we take. Where do we take advice from? Srimad Googlacharya. I like to call him Googlacharya. There's answer for every question. All you have to type in, if you feel lucky, you get your answer. Google has answers for everything. But that's not truth. We take advice from those who are free of these defects. Srila Prabhupada, the Acharyas, and those dedicated followers of Prabhupada who can help us become like them. When we take advice from those who are free of these defects, we become free of those defects. And when we take advice from those who are defective, we will continue to remain defective in whatever we do. However good the advice might look like, however convincing it is still within the bodily conception of life, which is not to be trusted. And so, That's the, I guess, caution. The best process is to take advice and instructions of Sri Krishna or his bona fide representative. In this way, one can be happy in this life and the next. Any questions, comments? Siddharth, about medicine? Uh-oh.
Thanks a lot, Prabhu. Very interesting class. I would go back and hear it again. I'm just wondering how you would refute. Can you give a sample answer of how you would refute that the lifespan increased?
Yeah, I will give, but I will give after Sunday, because I don't want to answer the question for the students.
Can you give some pointers?
It's the same thing, isn't it? There are many ways of looking at it. First of all, the very theory of medicine as to what is called a medicine. If you look at it carefully, it is certain chemicals that are administered to remove the symptoms. But disease by itself, if you were to, where does disease come from? How does it begin? Disease is, it's not that when the symptom manifests, that's when the disease is there. The symptom, what you're seeing symptom, is an effect of the disease. So if medicine is meant to remove the effects, what about the cause of disease? You can spend all your life removing the symptoms. And what does modern medicine do? They not only remove the symptoms, they remove the organ also, so that there are no symptoms. Hey, you cannot have gallbladder infection because you don't have gallbladder. How does disease begin? It's described, disease begins as soon as you have a material body and mind. And once you're in this material world, the disease begins because of the mind. It's a subtle thing. Disease is a subtle effect, a subtle cause. And the disease of the body manifests because of the disease of the mind. And the disease of the mind manifests because of false ego. Is there a medicine to counteract false ego? There isn't. So you can give as much medicine as you want. It's only removing the effects of things. The false ego is this whole lust, greed, anger, envy, pride, madness, illusion. These all manifest as diseases, pathologically, physiologically. Mental illnesses because of conceptions of loneliness, abuse, whatever ways. And these are all how mental illness comes. Drug abuse. So the development in the fetus. So the real medicine is living a life centered around God. Now, by dint of being in this material world, still the body can contract diseases. It's possible. Because this material world is designed for birth, old age, disease and death. So transcending is not removal of disease. Transcending is of consciousness. The approach that chemicals can remove disease. Here's what happens. That particular disease, as we call it disease, may go away. I have a headache, I take ibuprofen or whatever, headache goes away. But what causes the headache? Tomorrow it will manifest as something else, as a wart, as something else. So I have different medicines depending on which part of the body it shows up in, but that's not the issue.
Since I agree with you, Prabhu, today we learn how to better manage the disease, even if we don't know how to cure the disease. But what I'm not convinced is because we call it medical research, and because of that we are able to live longer, even if we have a disease like HIV or cancer, we could live longer as opposed to just falling down dead that day?
No. It's not like because of better medicine we can live longer.
Management of disease.
What does better management mean? But one cannot live longer. One's lifespan is determined by karmic laws. If the karmic laws allow that that their disease will continue but they can manage it, then they're still living. If the karmic law does not allow, it doesn't matter what you give. In fact, a person can die without a disease. It's not based on disease, whether management or not. So we can't say that because we have modern medicines, people are living longer. It's not true. It is not necessarily true. People are still living with disease. And different diseases might be there. Oh, smallpox or whatever has been eliminated. But disease hasn't been eliminated.
1940s and 1950s, the lifespan increased. I mean, that's what the data says.
You and I both have lived with data. We know how data works. We know that. We know how data works. You can use data any way you like. Come on. Yeah, okay. So then if data can be used any way we like, how can we say I rely on that data? It's not reliable. The way the research can be, if we accept that the 4 basic defects are there, then even the way the research is conducted is defective. The way the hypothesis is constructed is defective. Because as soon as you construct a hypothesis, you have to write your long list of assumptions that are like these disclaimers to that hypothesis. So within a particular environment, you can say that this is okay, but you can't say that universally true. The very fact that in Dwapara Yuga they lived for 1,000 years. Now if someone lives for 100 some years, they show up on what I call Ripley's Believe It or Not. A previous generation lived longer. There must be certain pockets where the data must be valid, but you can't universally say. The data that they usually say is in Africa, so many children were dying. There was infant mortality, very high, but now it is reduced. How is that possible? In fact, infant mortality has increased because of abortions. How many abortions? So then they will say, life only begins after delivery. Really? Life begins at what's happening inside the womb is something else. Life begins at conception. So if you include all the data of abortions, then how can you say people are living longer? You're also into medical research. You have something?
In today's class, you raised Adi Devik, Adi Dehik, Adi
Srila Prabhupada raised, yes.
and Adi Devik. So I mean, in one way, these miseries are good because they act as an alarm in one's life, a reality check. So,
For those who want reality, otherwise they don't.
But a person, depending on his conviction and faith, can respond differently. Like either he will be alert, or he can use a snooze button, like your favorite Kailash story, or he can just completely be ignorant. So what is the role of faith and conviction in one's life?
Faith, every soul has faith. Faith is an intrinsic quality of the soul. That faith gets influenced by the modes of nature. So a person who has faith in whose faith is influenced by the mode of ignorance, he can only think of destructive ways. So before I die, I should kill someone. Someone whose faith is influenced by the mode of passion, they'll be convinced that before I die, I must accomplish something for myself. More money and name, something. Those in the faith in the mode of goodness will say, before I die, I must do something for humanity. I should do something for others. And those whose faith is transcendental will say, before I die, let me serve Krishna nicely. So it depends. Having faith is not enough. Having faith in the transcendental faith is important. If you like to more detailed understanding, chapter 17 of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, the first 5-6 verses is a question and answer between Arjuna and Krishna. Because Arjuna asked this question, a person who is very, very sincere, but he's not following Vedic or does not follow scripture, does he get any benefit? And Krishna answers the question, the whole chapter. Yeah? Okay, anything else? Keith, something? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.